The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. It is another episode of the Hard Rock Empire here on the Nerdcast Empire. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us. It is Sunday, June the 15th. We are halfway through the month of June already as we approach the end of the first half of 2025. And we are going to be talking about the music of May the 23rd this week. And it was a very good week of music. We'll be getting into that in the second portion of this program. We'll talk about the picks that we made of the new albums, and we'll also go over maybe some of the bigger artists that also had releases this week, because it was a pretty loaded week for good music. So I think you will definitely find something you like on this week's playlist. Joining me in studio, as always, is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
Oh, it's going. Yeah, another huge week. So much to get to. Stuff that I haven't even listened to yet. I mean, I listened to the entirety of a lot of these, but man, like there are still things on the table that I need to check out. But yeah, excited to get into that. The Power Trio today is a topic that I probably could have spent a very long time on and created an entire Spotify playlist around, but I tried to hold back. But yeah, excited to get into it.
Yeah, for sure. There's like you said, a lot of options this week for the Power Trio, and we'll get into those in a little bit as we get to the last portion of our program. And again, we'll be checking out the music of May the 23rd this week. And before we do that, we'll get to some news headlines. And first news headline, we'll talk a little bit about Alice Cooper. We've talked a little bit about this album on previous episodes, but there was a story this week on Blabbermouth that kind of brought the album back to the forefront. And of course, the big news with Alice Cooper is the surviving members of the original band have gotten together and have decided to record an album. It will be coming out this summer. And this article about Blabbermouth, or from Blabbermouth, basically talked about how it was a great process, that there wasn't really any hard feelings when the band kind of went their separate ways over the years. And because of that, they finally just decided, hey, let's get together and let's do another album. So in 2025, they have put another album together, and kind of a drive to get back to their sound of the 1970s. But, you know, we talk so much about these bands who have internal strife and, you know, they can't get along and they just won't get back together, or they break up in their into their 60s and 70s. And it's kind of refreshing just to read this story and see that these guys clearly still like playing music together, and it makes you excited for what the album's going to sound like.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. It's what you expect aging rock stars to behave like. I didn't want to say elderly, but they're kind of there. Let's be honest.
Sure.
But, I mean, here you have this classic band that went their separate ways as Alice Cooper kind of went off on his own and had a huge solo career essentially. But, you know, in the article, he talks about how, you know, they didn't really have a divorce. They just separated. There was never any bad blood, no lawsuits. They stayed in touch. You know, they've worked on some of his albums throughout the years, like Welcome to My Nightmare that came out a few years back. There were some guest appearances on that, I remember. And, you know, eventually he just came up with the idea, hey, guys, why don't we just do an album together? And he mentions there that, you know, Bob Ezrin came in, longtime producer of Alice Cooper, and things went really smooth, and it sounded exactly like 1975, like it was the sequel album to Billion Dollar Babies. And, you know, you have all the surviving original members, guitarist Michael Bruce, bassist Dennis Dunaway, and drummer Neil Smith. Sadly, Glenn Buxton passed away in 1997, but, you know, it seems like a lot of what they do when they do get together is kind of in tribute to him, and it sounds like it should be really fun and definitely a throwback to the old Alice Cooper band.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we've talked about a lot with Alice Cooper over the years is, you know, the artists, the band themselves have found a way to kind of evolve with the times. Whatever the era is that they're releasing new music in, they've always kind of found a way to morph their sound to be palatable to a new generation, and it's why they've had such staying power. But, you know, this is kind of a reversal of trend for them. Rather than coming out with something new that is maybe sounds a little bit like the music of today, you know, and it makes sense. You're bringing back these original members. Let's make an album that sounds like what we used to sound like. And I think that's going to be great for longtime fans of the band, and I think it'll be great for newer fans of the band that continue to see them, that will, give them a chance to maybe get into some of that older music when they hear this new album and say, "Oh, this sounds great too." It's like, well, yeah, now go check out these albums from the '70s, and you'll get more of that. So I think any chance it feels like they're just kind of tying their whole catalog together with this album, which I think is really cool.
Well, I think it's really the separation between Alice Cooper, the artist, and Alice Cooper band.
Yes.
It's they're two separate things when you think about it. Is that Alice Cooper, the artist, went on to become a hair metal act and kind of a new metal thing in the 2000s, and that was kind of his thing. Yet you have these original band members from back in the day. You put them all together, and we're teleported back to 1975, and this is the Alice Cooper band again. It's like a separate entity, but it's kind of cool. I may not enjoy it as much as some of his albums, especially like in the 80s and 90s, but I think it's cool that they can go back and recreate what they had back then. I'm excited for it because I think Alice Cooper's a hugely talented guy, but again, it's not made with me in mind. I wasn't around for the original run of the band, but still, it's good to see so many of them are still in a condition where they can get together and produce music, and it'll be cool to hear.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be something definitely different. I think like I said, if you're a little more interested or have kind of gotten into Alice Cooper, the artist, over the years as opposed to the band, it's probably going to be a little bit different for you as well. But, as we've talked about on this podcast, there are so many bands out there going back and making music that sounds like the music that came from the era of the Alice Cooper band that I think there's an appetite for it out there. I think people will be excited about it. So definitely interested in checking it out. And, it's probably, as Mike kind of alluded to, maybe not the era of Alice Cooper that I necessarily – I mean, there are some hits from that era that I enjoy, but not really when I got into Alice Cooper. So, having said that, I'm sure it's still going to be really good. Look forward to that. That's July 25th is when that's coming out, so just a little over a month away. So rest assured, we'll have some thoughts on that, I'm sure, when we get around to an episode in mid to late August when we talk about the music of July 25th. But definitely check that out, and it's exciting to see those guys continuing to make music in 2025. Another news story I just thought was interesting. We talk a lot about Megadeth on this podcast, and this is just an interesting story because, you've got the 40th anniversary of Killing Is My Business coming up, and Megadeth is using it as an opportunity to collaborate with Half Sumo, which I think a lot of people may be familiar with their merchandise line. They are an art collective out of Brooklyn, New York, and they have put together a series of merch from the band Megadeth, kind of tying into that 40th anniversary of Killing Is My Business. And, when you look at some of the merch, and we certainly encourage everybody not only to read the story on Blabbermouth, but go to the website, and not just the Megadeth merch, but as Mike's going to point out, I'm sure these guys collaborate with a lot of different bands and musical companies to do really cool stuff. And, this seems like it's a pretty neat idea to come up with something unique for this anniversary.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Dave Mustaine obviously has been a martial artist for a really long time, has a black belt in Taekwondo and Ukidokan Karate, as well as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's a brown belt in that. So when you think of a company you'd want to collaborate with, why not one that kind of does fight wear, essentially? And that's what Half Sumo is into. Some really cool designs. Obviously, the imagery of Megadeth's always been really cool anyway, with the Vic Rattlehead mascot, and it's kind of cool for this collaboration that they're kind of going back to like some of the really old designs from Megadeth, even from like old like tour posters. Like you look at, there's one of them that has kind of not the fancy Megadeth that was on Killing Is My Business, that was before kind of the logo we all know, but it's kind of the more just kind of standard Megadeth with Vic Rattlehead, his head underneath it. It's kind of a really cool throwback. But looking into it, that they're really doing this. There are 4 different waves of merchandise that's going to drop. Presently, we are on wave 1, which is titled The Streets. Started on June 12th, but that includes a Katana Vic t-shirt, Rattlehead Ronin t-shirt, the Half Sumo X Megadeth Anniversary logo tee, Katana Vic hoodie, Rattlehead Ronin hoodie, and the Mechanics Tech jogger. So some really cool designs there. And you know, for this kind of thing, I didn't think they were outrageously priced looking at them. Like I was expecting something a lot more ridiculous, and they're fairly reasonable, all things considered. Next month in July, they are going into the Mats collection, which includes a fightwear kit, rash guards, and short sets for mixed martial arts and jiu-jitsu, Rattlehead themed as well. In August, they are going to come out with a Chosen Ones custom kimono, which sounds pretty wild as well. And then finally in September, they have the Arsenal collection, which includes a Looking Down the Cross bomber jacket and the Vic Rattlehead tactical backpack. So keep an eye on the website as more things drop, because there's going to be waves of this, and it's really wild. Kind of going into their other collaborations, this company has worked with Adidas, Coca-Cola, the guitar manufacturer Gibson, which has some really cool designs with it, and also Matt Heafy from Trivium, which, again, not surprising. This dude is someone who is martial artist. He's very into Japanese culture, so they kind of have a similar thing going on, but his product line is really awesome, and if it's any indication of the future stuff we're going to see from Megadeth, I think it's worth checking out.
Pretty smart of them to do this in waves, because you said it is pretty reasonably priced for something like this, but at the same time, when you drop it all at once, then people will be like, oh, you know, maybe I can't buy all of it. But now it's like, well, we're going to put it out in 3 different waves, so you can buy a little bit now, you can buy a little bit later, and it's a great way to be able to price all those out. Yeah, the designs are really cool. I think, you know, we talked about it a few weeks ago with Metallica and their special edition of Load and you know, everything that was coming with that. I feel like, you know, something like this is another example of a band that doesn't really need to do anything special. Their fans, you know, they've got a new album coming out soon. I think they're finishing up recording it now, so we'll be talking more about that in the weeks to come. But it's like their diehard fans are going to buy whatever they put out. But it's like, if you find a way to do something unique and say, you know, if you're going to spend the money on merch, like, let me give you something cool that maybe is not what you're expecting. It's a great way to really thank fans who have been loyal to the band over these 4+ decades, and at the same time create some stuff that maybe the casual metal fan who maybe isn't a diehard Megadeth fan is going to look at that and say, hey, that's pretty cool looking. I want to buy that. So
yeah, absolutely. You also look at something like Killing Is My Business. This album has already been re-released like 3 or 4 times. So now that we've gotten to the 40th anniversary, it's like, yeah, will there be some sort of like ultra vinyl set for it? Maybe, but there doesn't need to be. There have already been so many iterations of this album. What do you do that's a little different? And, you know, when I talk about the prices, I can't help but compare it to like concert venue prices for merchandise. And you see a t-shirt here for $40, and that's about what you'd expect to pay at a concert. The hoodies are $75. So, I mean, it's not, I mean, the jogging pants are $60. Not insane compared to what you would probably spend if you went to see them live and bought merch at a table.
Yeah, which I think that's all you really ask for. Like, is it, you know, comparable to something that I would buy at a concert? And if the answer is yes, then I think you're going to get people that will sign up for that. So
nothing is ever the price you want to pay. That's
True.
just the reality.
Yeah, but is it close enough to the price you want to pay that you're willing to pay it?
Exactly.
That is economics 101. Like,
for sure.
You know, you need to find a way to at least make it reasonable or make it cool enough that you're willing to go outside of your budget a little bit. And I think they've done that with this collection. Yeah. So really interested to see some of the future stuff that comes out and maybe future collaborations for Half Sumo, who seems to be into some really cool looking stuff. So check that out if you're a fan of Megadeth or a fan of Half Sumo, I guess, and you just want some more cool merch from them. Speaking of one of those bands that have been around for a long time, let's talk a little bit about our final news story today, and that is the band Yes, who we talk about a lot on this podcast. They're going on tour. The Fragile Tour 2025, the album series, will be coming up later this year in the United States. The tour dates are listed on the Blabbermouth article that I have pasted in the chat. It starts October the 1st in Wallingford, Connecticut. We'll be swinging through this area in late October. They've got a Cincinnati date at the Taft Theater on October the 28th, and then it will wrap up on November the 16th in Reno, Nevada. So pretty quick tour, only about a month and a half, but they're going to be hitting a lot of dates, playing a lot of back-to-backs, which is wild for a band that's been doing it as long as they have.
Yeah.
Tells you kind of how they've taken care of themselves over the years. But, Yes is one of those groups that is, one of the forefathers of progressive rock. And I think if you have a favorite for progressive rock or progressive metal band, there's probably at least somebody in that band that has been inspired by Yes. So it is one of those bands that I don't know what's going on October the 28th or if I'm in town or what the situation is, but that is kind of one of those shows that I would like to see in
That would be
person
cool.
because, you just don't know how much longer these guys are going to be out there touring.
Yeah, absolutely. And the article does kind of make mention that there are technically no original members left of Yes. Steve Howe is in the band, and he's been there since 1970. So
It's still pretty original.
You're splitting hairs maybe a bit. He did play on Fragile. He co-wrote Roundabout. So not going to question his credentials. And honestly, anyone that they bring in, is going to have their chops. So I'm not. Yeah, knowing that there are still living and healthy members out there, it would be great for them to be involved as well. But I'm not going to dismiss this as a tribute band because John Anderson isn't with them. It is what it is, but I'm sure it'll be a tremendous concert.
And we've talked about John Anderson on this podcast. Obviously, he's doing some really cool things kind of off on his own.
Yeah,
so
and the Band Geek stuff that he has going on, I think.
There's some really cool videos that they've done live, including a live rendition of Roundabout, which they posted on their YouTube page a month or so ago. That's really good and worth checking out. So, yeah, I mean, it is kind of a situation where you have multiple Yes bands going around to some degree. But, definitely want to check these guys out. Again, so influential. Even, like you said, with Hal joining the band in 1970. Alan White, their drummer, was 1972. But it's, most of these guys have been doing this for at least 4 decades at this point that are in the band outside of a couple of members. But still be really cool to see them. The bands like that, I feel like I think about the fact that I never got to see Rush in person. And obviously that will probably never happen. Obviously, certainly not the original Rush, but when you get an opportunity to see bands like this, you start to feel a little more urgency at this point because it's like you really are running out of time. You need to probably see these bands. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting there thinking, man, I wish I'd have saw this band, and then they stop touring.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that should be something on everyone's priority list as far as checking off bands that they want to see. It's like I didn't get to see Ronnie James Dio as a solo artist. I saw him singing with Black Sabbath, which is still really cool.
Sure.
Not maybe quite the same, but it's something that is certainly a fond memory. Now, John Anderson is still touring with the Band Geeks. They're going to be rounding out their tour before too long, but they're playing Yes classics and more. So if you want to do like a compare and contrast thing, you have until July 13th, which is when their tour wraps up in St. Louis, Missouri. Maybe you can check them out and then see Yes and compare and contrast and see what you preferred.
For sure. And we talk about it all the time on this podcast, whether it's classic bands or bands that we introduce you to on this podcast. If you get a chance to see them live, please do so because it is a great way to support these bands at a time where it is very difficult to tour financially. So when you get a chance, please go out and support these bands in person, buy merch, buy albums, whatever you can do to keep the music that we love rolling on. So that's our news headlines for this week. A reminder to check out our website, nerdcastempire.com. Tentatively planning on being back tomorrow with an episode of the Nerdcast News Report. If we do that, it'll be sometime around 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Could be floating half hour to an hour either direction. So just watch our social medias. We'll tell you when we're going to be on, but we will get caught up with you tomorrow night with some nerdy news. Then, of course, we'll be back again next Sunday night with another episode of the Hard Rock Empire. It is the music of May the 30th as we wrap up the month of May. Hopefully it will be as strong a week as this week, although that might be asking for a lot because, honestly, this was a really good week of music. But join us next Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, with another episode of the Hard Rock Empire. But it is time to get to the music of this week, and you hear my spiel each and every week. Of course, Mike goes through and pulls a couple of different from a couple different sources to put together a playlist It includes all of the new album releases for a given date. That given date this week is May the 23rd. You will then pull at least one track off of each of those albums, and we'll put them into a YouTube playlist, which is currently popping up in the chat on Twitch and on YouTube as we speak. We go through, we listen to the music, we pick 2 albums that we would like to spotlight for this podcast, and we bring it to you. Just a reminder, and again, we'll get caught up on our, if you're normally listening to us on YouTube and Spotify, or not YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, those will be caught up soon, but they do not have the audio clips. You have to be with us on Twitch or YouTube, and the best place to do it to make sure it doesn't get muted is to join us live on Sunday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Before we get to Mike's picks, this was a loaded week. And honestly, this is one of those weeks where we've said it before. We could probably have each picked 3 or 4 bands.
Yeah.
And we probably still would have left some good albums on the table. So before we get to the albums that we did pick, let's talk a little bit about some of the ones that maybe didn't make the cut, or were left off intentionally because they were bigger artists that we typically don't spotlight on the podcast.
Yeah, as far as bigger artists go, a lot of a couple different live albums or compilations. You had something from Don Felder, Ronnie Romero, and Sweet, which were either live or compilation sets. New album from Head PE, which I did not know they were still out there and getting it done, as well as Hinder, which was another band I didn't realize was still putting out music, but I saw them at Rock on the Range back in 2007. They were
Wow.
good. As far as acts that I thought were good, but they didn't quite make the final 2, I suppose. Animalize had a new one, heavy metal band from France that was really good. A new one from Holler, Terrence Holler, who was one of my picks last year. His newest album, Next in Line, came out really solid as well. Let's see, we had a band from Italy, a melodic metal, symphonic metal band, Moonlight Haze, with their album Beyond. That was really strong. We also had a band from the United Kingdom, gothic metal, symphonic metal band, Pythia, with their album V Part 1 Unhallowed. But yeah, I mean, and there were others, but definitely a strong week and worth checking out. Plenty of new music.
Yeah, almost certainly going to be something for you on that playlist, so make sure you check that out and let us know. And if you make picks in the playlist, let us know. You can comment, obviously, on the YouTube link. That is always a good way to go. Or you can join our Discord, which I will be pasting into the chat right now on both YouTube and on Twitch. And that's a good way for you to tell us, what you like from this week, what you maybe I don't say didn't like. We try to stay positive on this podcast, but you can let us know what really stands out to you. Plus, you can always participate in our weekly question of the week and let us know what your choices are there. So I will pin that message in both chats. Join the Discord and let us know what you like off the playlist this week, even if it's stuff that we did not pick. But it is time to get to our picks. And again, really, really good stuff this week. A plethora of great acts to choose from. And Mike's going to get us started. What do you have for a very interestingly named pick number 1?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the name itself. Not to be confused with another band that has a similar name that sounds nothing like this. But yeah, my first one is a renamed band who is also re-releasing their debut album as a deluxe re-release. The band is from Sweden. They are The Devil Wears Nada, and the album is Postalgia.
Yeah, when I saw this on the playlist, I was like, is that right? Is that really is that really the name of this band? But indeed it is, and the name might get some people into this because it is definitely an album you need to check out.
Yeah, they sound nothing like The Devil Wears Prada, oddly enough. But looking at the review on rockposer.com, they kind of had a similar thought that I had, where it was like, when I saw that on my playlist, I have no idea what that sounds like. There's no indication whatsoever of what this music is going to be, and I was pleasantly surprised by it, at least. But yeah, this band was originally they originally released this album under the band name Adescence, which is also the title of the first track on the album. Oddly enough, they changed their name to The Devil Wears Nada and re-released the album with 2 bonus tracks. Oddly enough, The Devil Wears Nada is also a track on the album. So I don't know. I'm curious what the story behind the naming change was, but this is where we are. A couple of the bonus tracks include a new song from them, as well as a cover of the band Nestor, their song 1989, which is really good. The band is made up of Linus Johansson on vocals, Henrik Westergren on guitars, synth production, and backing vocals, Jakob Werner on keyboards and guitars, Fredrik Svensson Karlstrom on bass, guitars, and backing vocals, and Ludwig Alfren on drums, acoustic guitars, backing vocals, and synth production. I enjoy AOR as much as everyone else, but more often than not, I tend to focus more on the heavier side of the music we cover. Every now and then, a song from the playlist will hit me with a level of catchiness that's just kind of inescapable, and that's what happened here. The track Juliet was on the playlist, and the melody, kind of the dramatic sense that the song had, just kind of hit me a certain way. The beginning reminded me of kind of the more like Theatric Sonata Arctica songs. The song itself felt like what it would be like if Him decided to be an AOR band. Like the song structure felt very similar to me. That may not appeal to everybody, but it had me definitely wanting to check out the whole album. The album starts with a really cool instrumental. There are actually two of them on the album, which was the first track and then what was originally the last track, but are both are really cool. Track 2, Patient Zero, picks up and just immediately has this sound that kind of distances itself from what I think AOR sounds like. And I think that's part of my enjoyment of this band, is that they're not like every other AOR band. They seem to have a different angle to them, and the album, because of that, felt fresh while still kind of paying tribute to popular music of yesteryear, maybe. On top of the standout tracks, like I mentioned, there are the two really cool instrumentals, Adescence, the intro track, and then what was the final track, Till Death Do Us Part. Again, not typically what you think of AOR bands having long instrumentals, but that last track is. The Nestor cover song 1989 is really well done, and the new track Victims is solid as well. So if you've heard the original and not the deluxe version, it's certainly worth checking out the deluxe. Standout tracks on the album include Late Night Talking, Juliet, The Devil Wears Nada, Prima Nocta, and like I mentioned, track number 2, which we're going to play here, the song Patient Zero.
Let's check these guys out. The Devil Wears Nada with Postalgia. This is the second track off of that album, Patient Zero, so let's listen to a little bit of that now.
I can feel your angel like disguise reveals your true despise. Patient zero's your first in line. No second place for you this time. Patient zero, the time has come for Patient zero now.
You know, having listened to that clip there, the description about if ghosted AOR music is very accurate. Like, that definitely
Yeah.
reminds me of if you told me this was Ghost's latest album and that was the sound they were going with, I wouldn't even be
Yeah.
shocked by it. Like, it is, typically I end up kind of picking the AOR acts, and you got this one, and I think that's good because it is a nice balance that it's not just me always
Don't
picking
want to
the
pigeonhole
AOR.
anybody.
Yeah, and I think when we see the picks that I have, I think I'm definitely a little bit outside of maybe what I typically pick this week. But, it's good. I'm a huge fan of AOR. I haven't had the chance to listen to this whole album yet, but based on that clip, I have a feeling I'm really going to like this album. I think the more of this stuff out there, the better. It's just kind of, really enjoyable rock music that you can listen to in the background while you're working. It's just fun, and kudos to these guys for putting out something that's really awesome.
And shame on Frontiers for not snatching these guys up already. I don't know what they're doing. But Eonian Records, who I have listed as the label, well done. You guys picked a winner. I think these guys are solid.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't know if Frontiers monitors our podcast or not, but we'll see. Nevertheless, really good stuff from The Devil Wears Nada. Check out their new album, this new remixed album that is out this week. As always, you have 2 picks, and what do you have for pick number 2 for us this week?
Yeah, so pick number 2, I decided to go back a little bit closer to my comfort zone of thrash metal. Always cool when you pick a band that you don't think you've picked many from that country, just because you feel like you get a different flavor of what's similar, and that's kind of what we got here. This is the second full-length album from a thrash metal band from Croatia. They are Krematorium, and the album is Sinister Seduction.
Yeah, the name definitely jumps out at you, but I think the sound will likely jump out at people as well when they get a chance to check this out.
Yeah, absolutely. According to the Metal Archives, the band formed in 2007 as Krematorium, spelled with a C, which I imagine there's probably so many bands called Krematorium that begins with a C. I didn't go further to check on that. From 2011 to present, they are now Krematorium with a K, much to the delight of Mortal Kombat fans. I suppose.
It's funny, if their name was actually Krematorium with a K, they would be some sort of like pop punk band from the early 2000s, probably.
Yeah.
They would be touring with like Fall Out Boy and stuff like that.
Sponsoring the X Games on ESPN2.
Yes.
Band consists of, man, I'm going to do my best here. Eric Perusik on guitars, Domagoj Fisilkovic on vocals, Zenko Debik on bass, Dorian Perusik on drums, and Sebastian Zivkovic on guitars. Album is very rooted in 80s metal. MetalNoise.net has a review that includes a quote from the band regarding the process of creating Sinister Seduction. They said, Sinister Seduction is our second full-length album, contains 8 tracks in which we try to deliver an old-school vibe incorporating 80s thrash metal with new wave of traditional heavy metal. Both these genres were our driving force while writing and recording the album. The approach we took when we wrote lyrics was quite different than songwriting on our previous releases. We didn't want to release another war or anti-religious themed album. Instead, we opted for writing about themes which are much more familiar to us. Our inspiration came from movies, people, and events surrounding us. The music is definitely on point for this album. There's no doubt about that. The riffs and solos, especially on the song Reign of Terror, the soloing on that is so cool. It's definitely what you're looking for from a current day, heavily influenced by thrash and new wave of British heavy metal band, which these guys are by their own admission. I think there's probably also something kind of therapeutic about writing about stuff that isn't war and religion oriented. I think you're also going to appeal to a much larger fan base if you just write about common stuff. I think there's a lot of appeal for that right now, and these guys knock it out of the ballpark. This is just a tremendous album. 8 songs, 31 minutes, so definitely not, it doesn't stick around too long by any means. Standout tracks on the album include Stonehurst Asylum, Moonshine Rider, DFTE, Black and Sky, and the track that I picked to listen to, the song Reign of Terror.
Check these guys out. This is Krematorium with their new album Sinister Seduction. This is the 7th track off of that album, Reign of Terror. So let's listen to a little bit of that now.
Reign of terror has begun. Nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. Reign of terror, you are done. The last thing you hear is sound of the gun.
Yeah, sometimes I hear a song on the playlist if I get a chance to run through it before you've had a chance to make your picks and think, this is probably something Mike's going to give a very strong look at, just based on, thrash metal, really catchy songs. Like, it makes a lot of sense. Like, it's, again, a throwback without sounding dated. They've done a really good job of really capturing the essence of that type of music and yet making it something that sounds uniquely their own. And again, this is an easy listen at 31 minutes. You're going to get through it in a hurry, but it's packed a lot. Don't write 4 extra songs that aren't any good. Like, just give me your 8 best, and that's what they did here. And I think it makes for a really good album.
Yeah, it's tough sometimes to really encapsulate the greatness and my enjoyment of the album into like a 30-second clip. It was tough for me to pick what to play from these guys because to me, a lot of it is just kind of the sum of all the parts and just a really enjoyable album. And to your point about it being on the playlist and just immediately kind of screaming, hey, this is something Mike would like. You look at the album artwork, you look at the band's logo, it just, everything about it is like, oh yeah, this is gonna be good, and it didn't disappoint. Kind of to my point earlier about bands from Croatia. This is actually the second band from Croatia that we featured. The first one being Mantra, who had their album Titans released back in March. So kind of cool that we're slowly building a collection of Croatian metal that can represent the country, much like we see out of like Sweden or Italy.
Maybe one day we'll have a Croatian metal festival, and that'll
do
will
it.
feature all these bands. But good stuff from these guys. Krematorium, definitely check out Sinister Seduction, their new album on the list this week. As always, I have 2 picks as well. We are headed to Germany for pick number 1. This is a hard rock metalcore band out of Germany, and this is their first full-length album. It is Senna with Stranger to Love. And again, when I typically see the words metalcore, and I'll talk about it here kind of in my summary, that doesn't always give me 100% confidence it's going to be something I like. But these guys found a way to do it. Taking their name from the Arabic word for brightness, shine or glow, the band, and again, I'll do my best with my pronunciations on both of my bands today. We have Simon Masjetti on vocals, Tobias Stoltz on guitars and vocals, Marcel Durer on guitar, Fabian Katarius on bass, and Leon Dorn on drums. They had never planned on actually being Senna. Like, this was supposed to be a studio side project, and it ended up becoming its own full thing. And it's a good thing it did, because these guys have killed it with this first album. It's hard rock more so than metalcore. It's got a really good melody to it. They've got some screaming parts in there, but it's not abrasive, which is typically my standard as far as something that I'm going to really enjoy. And I think they've really kind of found that right middle ground, and I think it works really well. A review on Jace Media Music compared these guys to Holding Absence, Sleep Token, and Dayseeker. Sleep Token's the only one of those 3 bands that I know, but that might mean something to somebody else, so I throw that in there. If that helps you relate to their sound, that kind of gives you an idea of what they're going for. And again, the metalcore thing, sometimes that ends up a little bit too far the other direction for me, but these guys definitely leaned more into the hard rock side, which definitely made it an enjoyable listen, for me at least. Standout tracks include Blackout, High Note, Rain, and the song we're going to listen to on the podcast is Hurricane. Let's check these guys out. This is Senna with their new album, Stranger to Love. This is the opening track off of that album. It is Hurricane. Let's listen to a little bit of that now.
Explore the night with open eyes. Thought I came so far. Inspiring my vision. This only rhythm. I'm dressing and turning. I'm running on empty. It's been like a hurricane. The stars falling in the pouring rain. Sing me a lullaby. Go sing me a lullaby. I surrender to the night. Bring me to the light.
But yeah, I mean, something that sometimes is a little bit more kind of outside of what I typically pick, but I honestly really enjoyed this album. It's 40 minutes for 11 songs. It's a pretty easy listen, but I love the energy they bring throughout this album, and really kind of excited to see what these guys do going forward, being Senna with their first full-length release. Mike, your thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, it's funny that Sleep Token gets thrown out there, because I feel like they're now kind of the poster child of this is what modern metal is. So if I can tie it in a comparison to Sleep Token, that's what we want to do. But yeah, I mean, these guys seem less modern metal and more just metalcore, and that's not a bad thing either. I think ultimately it comes down to when you do the clean vocals, can you sing? And this guy clearly can. I think well-placed screams are always welcome. Just based on what I've heard, they have a pretty good blend of the two. And yeah, when you actually do the clean, you better do them well. And that sounded great.
Yeah, these guys really enjoyed this album. Looking forward to seeing where these guys go from here. But off to a great start. Senna, definitely check those guys out. My first pick for this week. As always, I have 2 picks as well, and we are headed to Slovakia. Excuse me, I said Croatia earlier. Slovakia, Bratislava, actually, where this band is from. And this is actually a re-release on the list for this week. And yet it is definitely worth your attention. This band was formed in 2007. The album this week is The band, I should say, is Signum Regis, or Regis, with the Eyes of Power. This is a progressive power metal band. I think that's going to be pretty obvious when you hear the clip. This album was originally released on November 12, 2010. The lineup at the time was our good buddy Goran Edman, who we've talked about a lot on this podcast, on vocals, Robbie Koenig on bass, Philip Kolis and Otto Kaliber on guitars, and Jan Tupi on keyboards, and Adrian Ciel on drums. The band overall has released 7 full-length albums. This was released via Inner Wound Recordings back in 2010. It's been remixed by Philip Kolis and features new artwork on the album by Uwe Jarling, who has worked with Gravedigger and Mystic Prophecy. And, of course, you have Goran Edman, formerly of Yngwie Malmsteen. He's been in a handful of other bands we've talked about on this podcast, who did vocals on all the songs. Comments from Ronnie Koenig on the re-release. He said, in my estimation, this album is tailor-made for fans of historic concept metal albums, for fans of Signum Regis, obviously, but I think it has a lot to offer fans of bands like Symphony X or Yngwie Malmsteen. If you're an ancient history nerd, you will love the lyrics and the booklet. It is very special. I don't think you will find anything like it. Fair enough. Like, this is a really good album. And, it sounded like, just from some of the comments I read online, that this was an album that was kind of in need of a remaster and a remix, and they've done it justice by the work they've done on it. And this was the first time I've heard it, so it's new to me, and maybe it'll be new to you, but definitely a really enjoyable album. Standout tracks include Renewal in the East, Dura Europus, Purpleborn, and One Fatal Enterprise, which is the song we're going to listen to on this podcast. Let's check these guys out. Signum Regis, or Regis, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. Actually, The Eyes of Power, this is remixed here and remastered in 2025. This is the 5th track off of that album, One Fatal Enterprise. Let's check these guys out now. Yeah, if you had any question on whether it was, power metal, I think you pretty much answered in that 30-second clip. Yeah. That is quintessential power metal, but really enjoyable album. And, if the re-release has really kind of given this album, which was already kind of one of their high points in their band, kind of some new life and put it in front of some new people, I think that's a good thing. So, Mike, your thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, this was one that I did get a chance to listen to throughout, and it's great. I don't know what the original mix sounded like, but I'm certainly glad that whatever it was, it now sounds like this, because this was high quality.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. I think if you're a fan of power metal, you're going to really dig this too. Signum Regis, with The Eyes of Power, my second pick for this week. It is time to get into the vault, where Mike and I will each give you a classic album that you should check out. And Mike is continuing through his vault through the alphabet. We have turned the corner on the way home. Last week we did the letter N. This week you're up to the letter O, which probably limits the choices just a little bit. But what do you have for your vault pick this week?
Yeah, the letter O is a bit of a challenge. The majority of the O albums in my current collection are The Offspring and Orgy. I picked an album from The Offspring the last time around. I didn't want to revisit that. So I started thinking, this might be a good time to maybe go out and acquire something new, not new, but new to me new. And I thought back to my trip to Sonic Temple and the opening band from the main stage there, the band Overkill. And I kind of felt bad that I've never really sat down and listened to all of their albums. I just haven't, over the years, I've slowly incorporated other 80s thrash bands that weren't the big four into my collection and into my working knowledge. And, bands like Testament, Death Angel, I just haven't gotten around to Overkill yet. So I wanted to start remedying that. So I picked this up on Amazon, and now I own it, so I can talk about it as part of my vault. So today we were talking about their third studio album. Like I mentioned, the band is Overkill, and the album is 1988's Under the Influence.
Yeah, this is another one of those bands that I really haven't had the chance to give a good listen to over the years yet. They are a band that is constantly listed as a very influential band from over the years. Like you said, you got a chance to get to hear them live, and this is a chance to get to hear them on tape, if you will.
Yeah, it was kind of striking to me that at Sonic Temple, there were some older guys in the row below me, and they knew all the Overkill songs, and they talked about how many times they had seen them, and they had patches on their battle vests, and I just thought like, I obviously I know the main acts here. I know Metallica, I know Rob Zombie, Alice Cooper, Testament, I somewhat Exodus, but I don't know, not super familiar with Overkill. So that was also kind of a driving factor in me saying, okay, if they have this loyal of a following, this devoted of a fan base, I needed to give these guys a listen. My most vivid memory up until this point of them was the video for Hello from the Gutter being on an episode of Beavis and Butthead. And for whatever reason, Beavis and Butthead were making fun of it, which kind of blew my mind because Overkill isn't a hair metal band. Like, this isn't Winger, which you expect to be, made fun of on Beavis and Butthead. This was a legit thrash band. I don't understand. I mean, the video was cheesy, but, it was like it was made in 1988, which it was. Like Megadeth and Iron Maiden, they had a mascot, this bat-winged skull thing flying around the video, which now looks terrible. Might have looked cool in 1988. I don't know, but I mean, it was a cool logo long before Avenged Sevenfold used that kind of imagery on their album. So, they were kind of ahead of their time, maybe. The band formed in 1980 in New Jersey and are one of the biggest East Coast thrash bands to come out of that scene, along with Nuclear Assault and Anthrax. They kind of toured and kind of coalesced together back in the day. Wikipedia says they're often referred to as the Motorhead of thrash metal because they kind of have a little more of a punk edge to them. Bobby Blitz Ellsworth, the original and current lead singer, he has a higher pitched voice, makes me think of Halford at times or Udo Dirkschneider. But I think that's awesome because it gives their sound a little bit of a different flavor to it. You're not going to confuse him with Dave Mustaine or Joey Belladonna or Tom Araya. He has his own thing, and it works. The band still has two original members left. Like I mentioned, Bobby Ellsworth, the vocalist, and Dee Dee Verney on bass. Dave Linsk joined in 1999 on guitars, and Derek Taylor on rhythm guitar in 2001. So, yeah, they have two original members, but the other two guys now, 1999 and 2001, they are long-standing members of this band, as crazy as that sounds. There's just something kind of working class about listening to these guys. Like, they're not thrash royalty, but like I mentioned from my experience at Sonic Temple, clearly they have a following. It kind of feels like they're like an underdog band despite having 20 albums over all these years. And with 20 albums, I have a lot of work to do to kind of get myself caught up on them. But I'm excited to do so because this album was actually really awesome. It's 9 songs, 47 minutes. Standout tracks include Shred, Never Say Never, Hello from the Gutter, Drunken Wisdom, Head First, and Overkill 2, Under the Influence. But yeah, if you're looking for a place to get into the Overkill library, I haven't listened to the rest of their stuff, so I'm not the foremost expert. But I don't think this is a bad place to start.
Yeah, for sure. And, like you said, this is a band that I would like to get a chance to listen to some of their catalog. And just for whatever reason, they've kind of always slipped through the cracks when you deal with bands of that era. And, short of having those guys from Sonic Temple stop over and give us a crash course in Overkill, just diving into the albums is a great way to do it. So excited to check that out. And definitely a chance, like you said, to kind of go out and get into not a new band, but a band that you maybe haven't had the chance to really dive into, and now you're looking forward to diving into their entire catalog.
Absolutely.
Might take several weeks to do that, but
it'll be a while. I was looking for some sort of inexpensive, like, super pack of, like, all 20 albums. I'm not sure such a thing exists, but that would be really cool.
There you go. If Overkill's out there listening, like, maybe it's time to release your super set of super collection of albums, assuming they're even all on the same label when you've had that many releases.
I would guess that's probably a messy thing.
Probably so, but check those guys out. Overkill, Mike's vault pick for this week. Sometimes the timing of things just kind of works out the way it does. I am, of course, going through Frontiers Records bands, and we're spending 2 weeks on each letter. 1 week I pick a band, the next week a randomizer picks a band, an album. And last week, as so happened, the band Giant had a new album on Frontiers Records. And, well, we're up to the letter G, so might as well just stick with Giant. This is an opportunity for me to go back and check out their last album they released on Frontiers, which was back in 2022. The album is Shifting Time, and it is, by and large, the same personnel that worked on the album that we talked about last week. So if you want to rewind to last week's episode, which we encourage you to listen to, you can kind of get the gist of it. To give you kind of the shortened version, of course, Dan Huff really was, along with his brother David, were the kind of the driving force of Giant. Dan is a very busy guy, as we talked about last week, involved in a plethora of music projects, so not really the time to be with Giant anymore, but he does tend to drop in, whether he's writing songs, whether he's mixing songs, whether he's, maybe even performing instrument parts on certain songs. He does keep his hand involved in the band, but not there full-time anymore. But Frontiers has still managed to put together a version of Giant that is still really enjoyable. It helps a lot that they were able to get Kent Hilly from Perfect Plan to take over lead vocals on both these albums, the one that came out we reviewed last week, and the one that came out back in 2022. And he's really good. Obviously, it doesn't sound exactly like the original Giant with a new lead singer, but as far as just enjoyable AOR type rock, it's great to see those guys still out there making music. And this album was really good as well. This was their first album, and I think like 11 years or 12 years when they released this one in 2022. Didn't take nearly as long for them to come back in 2025. Of course, you will see in the credits, Alessandro Del Vecchio involved with the mixing of this. Of course he is. There's some other guys involved as well in this, including Christian Fear, Pete Alpenborg, Jonas Eriksson, Mike Pallas, also involved with different production aspects. But Del Vecchio was the one who mixed and mastered the entire thing. So it's going to be catchy and it's going to be good. And it was. It was a good album. If you're a fan of Giant, if you enjoyed the album I talked about last week, I definitely would encourage you to go back and check this one out as well, because I think you're going to find out that this is really good as well. So I think it's definitely worth a listen. Standout tracks include Let Our Love Win, Never Die Young, My Breath Away, and The Price of Love. Giant's really good. Frontiers is really good about keeping these bands going, even with new members, and it's definitely worth a listen. And it's just, this is the thing I like about Frontiers is a chance for a band like Giant, who I would say, I don't want to say they were a one-hit wonder, but they were, of those types of bands, maybe didn't have a ton of hits, but here they are in 2025, still making really good music.
Yeah, it's encouraging because, I recall back when I was doing my glam rock and metal vault reviewing Giant's Last of the Runaways back from 90 or whatever year that came out, and that was a tremendous album. So, if they're still out there putting out music that is of that same caliber, that can't be a bad thing. It's just a shame that, and I've mentioned it so many times, it gets ridiculous, but it's a shame that there's not a wider audience commercially here for that kind of music, because it's still viable.
Yeah, for sure. And unfortunately, that's just the way it goes in the music business, but we'll get a chance to put a spotlight on it on this podcast, and that is hopefully why you come here to check out our podcast each and every week. But definitely check out really anything from Giant. I don't think you can really go wrong. Next week, there's a couple of interesting possibilities, so we'll see how that spins out, but it'll definitely be something that I have not featured on this podcast for the letter G, so check that out next week. It's time to get to the Power Trio, your weekly hard rock hat trick, where we take a question and we come up with some answers. And, it's been interesting trying to continue to come up with new topics and, going back through some suggestions we've had over the time. And, of course, you can suggest topics for the Power Trio by joining our Discord or leaving comments on our YouTube page and let us know what you would like to hear us opine about. But this was one that kind of I maybe had forgotten it was suggested, so revisiting it now. It's the top 3 rock heavy metal songs that would be on your workout playlist. So if you're going to hit the gym, you're looking for some metal, some rock music to really get you fired up. I would presume you wouldn't be listening to a bunch of ballads while you're working out. That seems a little weird unless you're on some sort of roid rage and looking to come down maybe. I don't know. But generally it's going to be upbeat stuff to rock out to in the gym while you're working out. And I don't know, do we have any Shane picks for this week?
We did not. I
Okay.
mean, it is a holiday.
It is.
So
It is Father's
maybe,
Day.
Maybe we did not get that memo back, but everyone needs a week off, so
sure.
not a big deal.
Yeah, for sure. We'll get back with Shane here soon. And it is Father's Day, and happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. So let's get to your picks, and we'll see. Should be less of a chance of overlap, especially since I came up with mine during the podcast because I forgot to do that. But you obviously have a wide range of music to choose from, and curious to see what you have for your picks this week.
Yeah, like I mentioned kind of in the intro, it would have been easy for me to just keep listing and eventually end up with like an entire Spotify workout playlist. I capped it at 6, which since we don't have any guest pickers, that maybe isn't such a bad thing. I might have like the A squad and the B squad here of my workout playlist hat trick or power trio. Number 1 is a song that I actually heard, I want to say on Pandora maybe. It was something that I actually heard at the gym based on maybe an Ed Guy or Sonata Arctica station, but really awesome band, and this was kind of my introduction to them. The band is Serenity, and the song is The Art of War.
Oh, yeah.
From their 2013 album, The Art of War. Just really, really cool band. The song has this like final boss feel to it, heavy riff, ultra melodic, larger than life feel. Just you can't help but be motivated listening to it.
Yeah, I haven't thought of that song in a long time, but that is a good one. A good first choice, and definitely one that will get you fired up to get started in the gym.
Yeah. Moving on, we kind of mentioned the lead singer of this band a little earlier, but this is a song in an album that the entire thing could be a workout mix. That's the song Shogun from Trivium.
Oh, yeah.
From their 2008 album Shogun. Just the whole album is so cool, and the chorus to Shogun just feels so huge. Great finale to an awesome album. I highly recommend that and any of their work. Number 3 of the A squad of my power trio would be the song Tragedy and Triumph from Iced Earth. This is from their 2011 album Dystopia. Heavy riffs, singing about overcoming adversity. Just kind of what you want to keep you going through a set or through your cardio. Just really awesome stuff.
Yeah, it's all really solid picks, and I knew you would come up with picks that would not be the obvious choices, which is good because having come up with mine at the last minute, mine are certainly more on the obvious side, maybe a little more mainstream, but I'm sure songs that probably would appear on your list as well. Number 1, I went with Tornado of Souls from Megadeth.
Oh, yeah.
We may have even talked about that on this question of the week because it's just a great song, and the guitar riffs in that are something that'll definitely fire you up. Let's skip number 2 for a moment. We'll come back to that one because I came up with 4. Mostly I pulled up a workout playlist and pulled some off of there. I wanted to put something from The Battle from Alan Land on there because
Yeah.
I when I go walking, I will listen to that album in its entirety.
Great album.
I could probably just put the whole album on there, but I went with Truth About Our Time, just another song with a great guitar riff.
I would think Come Alive would be another one.
Come Alive. I mean, there's just that whole album is amazing.
Yeah.
There are a couple slower songs on there you probably wouldn't want to work out to, but generally, if you put that on while you're in the gym, you're going to get some stuff done. And then, I have both Sonata Arctica and Ed Guy represented. We'll take the Ed Guy song. We're going to go with Dead or Rock from Ed Guy. Just another rockin' song from those guys. A little bit later in their catalog, but just one that I really enjoy. So those would be my 3 if I had to pick 3. And I know you've got a B squad, so I'll go ahead and throw in my Sonata Arctica Ain't Your Fairy Tale as a
Great track.
as one honorable mention for me. But what do you have for your B side of this playlist?
Yeah, so moving on, we have Scar Symmetry with their song A Parentheses in Eternity.
I don't know if I know that one.
From 2009's Dark Matter Dimensions. It's kind of got a slower intro, but once it gets going, it's fast. It's so intense. The chorus is like one of the more intense choruses of any song I listen to. It's so cool. A little less intense, the band Shadow Gallery, they have a song Roads of Thunder from their 1998 album Tyranny. First off, Tyranny's a great concept album if anyone has not listened to it, which I assume a lot of people haven't. Really good melodic hard rock. the band themselves, they were awesome. Less heavy, like I mentioned, but still just based on it being part of a story and kind of like the inspirational, motivational part of the story, it's a solid pick. Finally, last but not least, is Solution 45 with their song Clandestiny Now. This was a band that I discovered after finding out that the lead singer of Scar Symmetry, Christian Alstom, left the band and showed back up with these guys. So I knew it was something I had to listen to. This song is just so heavy, so melodic death metal with a really beautiful chorus because this guy has a tremendous voice. I didn't realize it until today, kind of doing a little research on it. I didn't know that Dark Tranquillity's vocalist, Michael Stan, who his name pops up more and more, it seems, he wrote the lyrics and did backing vocals on this album. And I guess I'm not surprised because that dude is remarkable talent as well. But yeah, that song is just, it's a long song, but the chorus, again, when you're working out, it'll carry you through that next minute on the treadmill.
Yeah, it's some really good stuff there, and some different picks that maybe people aren't familiar with, so give you something to check out and add to your playlist. And
yeah, I was gonna go Megadeth, but I wasn't sure what direction I wanted to go because I thought like Rust in Peace Polaris was like one of my tennis pump up songs, but at the same time, like it's not Tornado of Souls as far as like tempo. Like
Yeah.
it's heavier in that regard, but yeah, I end up deciding to go with lesser known things, but there are any number of Megadeth songs that would show up on my workout playlist for sure.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, all the bands I chose, there's probably at least I could make a playlist of just those bands, and I think you would come out in pretty good shape. But we want to know what your picks are. Again, join our Discord. Let us know what your Power Trio answers are. What are your go-to metal and rock songs for your workouts? Of course, you can also leave comments on our YouTube page. And again, while you're there, drop us a follow on Twitch and YouTube. We're continuing to build our audiences there. YouTube, it'll probably be forever before we get monetized. Twitch, we're a little bit closer. But anything we can do to kind of move that direction so we can continue to do really cool things on the podcast, we certainly appreciate. But it is time to wrap up this edition of the Hard Rock Empire for another week. A lot of really great music this week. Definitely encourage you to check out Mike's playlist. I guarantee, even if maybe the picks we made weren't necessarily up your alley, there is something for you this week. Really good stuff. And, of course, we'll be back with another episode of the Hard Rock Empire 1 week from tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern Time on Sunday, June the 22nd. It'll be the music of May the 30th coming up next week. And, again, all plans are we'll be back with you tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern or thereabouts, for another episode of the Nerdcast News Report. Make sure you join us for that. A big thanks to Stove Lake Media for their continued support of our podcast. Big thanks to Mike for all the work he does on this podcast. And a big thanks to you for listening whenever and wherever you happen to listen to our podcast. We'll be back again tomorrow with another episode of the Nerdcast Empire. But until then, don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.